This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, hope you're well. Thanks for joining me. This is a chat featuring David Stepanavicius from, I'm going to call it an Australian outfit. There you go, I'm going to be a bit controversial right off the bat here because Dave's at the centre of the band, even though they're based in Canada. Well, he's based in Canada these days, and the band is called ATRÆ BILIS. Yes, the new album, Aumicide, is the reason for our introduction. I was a bit taken aback, as you'll hear through the introductory exchanges, that with that accent that David's got, because I was expecting a Canadian accent, and I thought I might have been on the wrong call for a sec. But no, it's David. David's an Aussie, and he's made his way over to Vancouver, a bit like my sister-in-law did for many years. Nice part of the world. Now, that album, Aumicide, fantastic stuff. Unbelievable. One of the albums of the year so far, no question. With thanks to David Brenner from Earsplit PR for actually organising this chat as well. This is one of the first of many of us getting together and saying, I'd like to interview this one and that one and so on. So there's more from the underground that are coming, and this is a fucking good example of it. So throughout the chat, yes, of course, David and I talk about Aumicide, the new album from ATRÆ BILIS, and everything that goes into that. But ultimately, it's just two Aussie blokes talking shit, really. He's a good bloke, David, and it was easy to continue the conversation. It's one of those ones that could have gone on for a lot longer. We dive into psychedelics, the nature of mortality even, I think, at points. Yeah, two Aussie blokes shooting the shit, as we like to say. So before we get into the conversation, I do have a tune to share with you, and of course it is from the album Inward to Abraxas. Wow. Now look, it's got elements of Morbid Angel and the Tech Death Supremos that are nearby in Vancouver. I think they're from Vancouver, Archspire, aren't they? Anyway, so it's kind of the meeting point between those two. I'll give you that preamble or that introduction because I was really enthusiastic about meeting David, actually, based on this tune here and the rest of the album too. But this one here, I feel like someone's finally nailed that tech death meeting point with the classic Van Halenisms of Morbid Angel. Yeah, took someone a while, but David did it, so there you go. Enough from me. Here's the tune, Inward to Abraxas, and once it's done, you'll hear from him. Let's go.
man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, David. David, that's a familiar accent. I wasn't expecting
It
that.
is, mate. Yeah, how you doing? Another fellow Australian on the line, man.
Yeah, good, mate. What's going on, mate? What is it? You're in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've been living in Vancouver just over 6 years now.
Oh shit.
So,
Okay. Was it love or work or a combination of both that brought you over there?
It was a broken heart, actually. Yeah, I just needed to do some soul searching. I bought a one-way ticket to Toronto. I'd been to Toronto previously and really liked it. It's quite easy for, countries that share the Commonwealth to get the working holiday visa, and I was of ripe age. So I had a visa in my back pocket. Things just weren't really, I was having a pretty horrible year, frankly, in 2017. And just needed to just kind of just recalibrate everything going on. So I decided to just sell everything I owned and just bought a one-way ticket to Toronto to figure out my headspace. And things weren't working out in the East Coast as much as I loved it there. The music scene was great. Excuse me. Music scene was great. People were great. Everything was great. I just couldn't figure out some work. I was running out of some money. Decided I would fly back to Melbourne, just put some cash on my credit card. But before I did, I wanted to see some friends in Seattle and Portland on the West Coast. And while I was hanging out in Vancouver, I was put in contact with my current employer. They offered me work. Decided, okay, well, instead of putting the flight and stuff on my credit card, I'll hang about. I'll work for a little bit. And in that time, I met our drummer. Thought, okay, well, I may as well record a demo. That'd be the coolest travel memento I've got. COVID hit. That was picked up. It was released. $20 spin picked us up. I'm still here. So
it's worked out. The gamble paid off.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's not really what I expected. It kind of feels like a bit of a fever dream. I feel like I could wake up in Australia at any point and be like, wow, is my life in Canada a reality? And vice versa. It feels like there's no real crossover of a Venn diagram. I do have some friends that pass through on tour, and it's always quite a shock for them to see me here my life in Canada. But apart from that, I haven't really been able to share it with any loved ones. So it's a strange one for sure.
Yeah. It's my sister-in-law lived in Vancouver for about 5 years or so and loved it. And it was COVID. Or actually, it wasn't COVID. It was her father passing away. So my father-in-law passing away that brought her back, and that coincided with COVID. Bang, that hit, and then she wasn't able to go back because of that.
My apologies on the loss.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Well, death is as common as life, isn't it? So
it's part of life, right?
Oh, it is. Yeah. I journey with ayahuasca, so I've seen.
Awesome.
I guess I've integrated the whole idea of death to be as common as in my philosophy as life has been, because it's a very profound thing when it's not that you see what happens on the other side, but the fear of death or the apprehension of what is on the other side, because you get a tiny glimpse of it, evaporates, and you see that the arc of the soul's journey extends, it's infinite. So it doesn't stop now, but you feel it. It's very hard to describe. You see it and you feel it. Yeah,
I can relate to that. I think it's amazing that that's part of your spiritual journey, because I have zero anxiety about death, and a lot of the themes in this band actually are about rebirth and the time between physical lives. Anyway, so that's amazing. I think it's once you let go of the fear of death, it just makes you a lot more mindful and grateful for the present, right?
Yeah, it gives you energy. It's, as I say, it's very hard to put it into words, and I haven't been journeying so long that I'm able to use the best kind of language about it. But the way that I look at it, it's a bit like you relate to this being Aussie. Are you from Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane or?
Melbourne. I did study in Sydney for a year and a half, but relocated back to Melbourne.
Right, I was just going to use a football parlance. That was also, if I'm referring to the NRL, it's all about momentum. So being a rugby league fan, it's all about momentum. And oftentimes you find that even if you're not having you find these NRL teams, when they're not having such a great game, as long as in the second half, if they're down by 30-0 and they come out and they might say drill it back to say 24-36, this sort of thing. So they've actually won the second half. Ayahuasca's given me that perspective that no matter what's really going on in your life at the time, you've actually got to keep trying. It's actually really important to keep trying because that momentum actually carries on into your next life, into your next journey, if you like. So that's why I find that this second half of my life, I'm 46, I think it's fair to say I'm in the second half of my existence. But it's all about doing the things that I really want to do and raising a family. I'm married and got a mortgage and all the rest of it. But it's really important, like what I think you've discovered, which is to follow your soul's calling, and music for both of us is so important. So this next phase of my journey is really, it's not wholly and solely dedicated to music, but it's really about following that as my North Star. Does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, the amount of times I've also had my own psychedelic experiences and spoke with my spirit guides and using the opportunity to ask them what my purpose is and how to let go of the toxic thoughts that unfortunately pollute a lot of my mindfulness. They keep reminding me just to relax and just concentrate on music. Yeah. So I try and incorporate. Well, I shouldn't say I try and incorporate. I try and worry less about the stigmas that's associated with this social success that's quite difficult for musicians to feel comfortable with a lot of the time. So
yeah. Well, you've got a heck of a project here, mate. Really, I mean, ATRÆ BILIS. When David sends, I know David, and he sends through some stuff, and we were looking at what the next lot of things that he was promoting is, and I had to listen to everything, and yours really jumped out without knowing any of your background, that you're Aussie or what have you. This is the first time I'm encountering that, so it's not a jingoistic thing when I say it's fantastic stuff and some of the best stuff I've heard this year. I love Morbid Angel. I'm one of those dyed-in-the-wool Morbid Angel fans, long time fan. So especially when I heard Inward to Abraxas, because you type into YouTube as you tend to, I've got a copy of the album, but you really want to see what it looks like with the visual component as well. And when I heard that, I just felt like you really understand what Morbid Angel is all about. You get the essence of what Trey's guitar playing, what he's trying to do with it. He's trying to go from, well beyond Neptune, his favorite planet being Neptune. So when I listened to that, it resonated quite a bit. But, for you, I think I've got a reasonable understanding of your philosophy now, in the 5 minutes or so that we've been talking. But it sounds like as though your musical philosophy, it mirrors your personal philosophy as well, and you're able to mine exactly where you want to go, and you're able to recreate what's up here.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to create anything. I try and just be in a flow state of just expression more than anything else. I really do appreciate you making the connection with Trey, because Trey is one of those incredible players that just has such a unique voice through his instrument, that's really what stands out to me more than the notes that he's selecting on the fretboard. His phrasings, and his bends, and his articulation is just so unique. Maybe some of that has just reverberated in me with the time that I've spent listening to Morbid Angel, but I wouldn't say I'm a diehard Morbid Angel fan per se, or any more than many other bands. But I think it is a safe observation to say that my guitar is just an extension of my personality in some ways, and I'm pretty grateful that it sounds like it's connecting with a lot of people, because that's the coolest part of doing music, I think, really.
Yeah, yeah. So the album, I'm going to mispronounce it. I hope not, but here I go. Is it Aumicide? Aumicide?
It's Aumicide. So is the same as OM. Om is AUM. This is the sound of the universe.
Okay. Again, in the few minutes we've been talking, I know there's some intent behind that title. So what's the title represent?
It's a concept record. I'm not sure if you've read the press kits, but
Mhm.
the image on the front is an image. It's not AI. Like, I feel some people want to believe that it is, just because of how unnerving it can be. It is a sculpture, and it is a photograph, but the specimen is representing this test subject that's subjected to an experiment in how to manipulate the human spirit. And in thinking about that, how does one actually do that? How do you put a divider, a ceiling over something like faith? And doing some research and some personal musings about that, I wondered if it would be possible to design an apparatus that effectively stimulates the perception into this consistent state of pain, agony, misery. And how do you do that? I guess, it's probably through the nervous system. You affect the five senses. There is no reprieve from any discomfort. So it's just endless discomfort. And what would that do to a human spirit over the course of 70 plus years, if they were in this environment where they could be sustained? And I can't imagine that there would be any God in that human experience at all. So Aumicide is all about the killing of the human spirit, the hope and faith within the human spirit. With the intent of the experiments would be to manipulate manifestation, particularly with the collective consciousness, or the egregore, if you would, and just how different things would look. We talk about different social classes and things being, socioeconomic, but imagine if it was on a spiritual level there too, and you could manipulate faith. So, yeah, that's generally the intent of the concept, and what I tried to explore in the themes of this album. And as noted, it is a concept piece, so every song is a different chapter of a longer story. So yeah.
I did read the presser actually, mentioning the themes of faith removal, simulations of hell, and the genesis of a new era. I was thinking of that film Event Horizon. Seen that?
I actually picked that up on VHS from my friend Ben that we were just on tour with. He plays bass in a band called Zoltan. And one of my hobbies is collecting VHS tapes. I love Event Horizon. I think it's one of the greatest sci-fi horrors, period. I didn't have that direct relation of the film to this record when writing it. In films, I guess maybe the most influential films on the ATRÆ BILIS lyrics are probably something like Into the Void, The Holy Mountain, films like that.
Yeah, killer. What about Christian Donaldson from Cryptopsy? You're probably mates with him. So what did he bring to the table?
Oh, mate. Where do I start? I love Christian. I miss you, Christian, if you're listening to this, buddy. So Christian mixed and mastered Apexapien, which was the album that we did before Aumicide. Apexapien was recorded and engineered here in Vancouver in a local studio called Rain City Recorders, and we had a different mixing engineer lined up. for post production, but it just didn't really work out. They're a great engineer, but what we assumed was we were going to sound like just wasn't really. It just wasn't working out that way. So we bailed ship and we started reaching out to some other engineers. And Christian, although he was extremely busy, was able to take it on. And from the first mix that we received back, it just smoked everything we'd heard before. So that's testament to just how incredibly talented he is. And so when we went into organizing the production, excuse me, for Aumicide, it was a no-brainer in that if Christian was able to elevate our sound as much as he had without any of, being in control of any of the recording, just how immense would the production be if we gave him total control over every step of the way. So we phoned him up and asked if he was interested in working together and how that was going to look like. And financially, it made more sense for us to fly out to Quebec as opposed to having him fly out to Vancouver. So yeah, that's what we did. I don't know how much you want to hear about the recording process, but we effectively spent a month out there and lived with him and his family for that period. And yeah, it was absolutely amazing. Yeah, it was great for me too, because Christian is a genius. I mean, like, you don't need anybody to tell you that. You can hear it. But one thing that I was extremely grateful for was whenever he thinks, he speaks out loud. So it's like having this periscope directly into his mind about every tiny little decision that he makes about recording and mixing and balancing and things. So yeah, I just really appreciated being able to observe his giant mind every day and hanging out with him. So yeah, I could talk about the man all day. Really don't really know where to start and where to end. Just endless love. And we've all looked up to Cryptopsy. They're just such an influential band on us and all periods of Cryptopsy. So yeah, just very humbling to meet your heroes and have them be total brothers, and
Sweet.
treat you like an equal. So yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah. Were there any albums? Are there any albums, I should say, that have been released of late whose sound, it's not about emulating their sound, but you're impressed by?
Yeah, I guess the immediate albums that come to mind, and I'm not great with remembering album titles, but the latest, and I'm probably butchering this, Aransi Pazuzu album is a big one.
Very good.
It's a very cinematic, very cinematic, very psychedelic. I really enjoy that. There's another record from a one-band brutal death metal band called Knitting. And that just really elevates the genre a lot. And coincidentally, we had recorded Aumicide before hearing that release, but there's quite a few similarities in like the guitar effects and stuff that Matt from Knitting had adopted. So yeah, that's an amazing one for different reasons. So I think those two are definitely pretty high up on the recent albums that I've been really impressed by at least the sonic qualities of. There's a lot more. I'd probably have to go through my phone and check my recent Spotify listens to verify more. But yeah, those two definitely come to the fore.
What were the albums that really got you into extreme death metal?
It was Relapse Records. When I was coming up, I mean, I'm 37 now, so when I was in high school, and, into my late teens and early 20s and stuff, they were the label that were just putting out such interesting stuff. I mean, their roster, it was Nile, it was Nathan, it was Pig Destroyer, it was Origin, it was Cephalic Carnage, it was Mortician. It was just, every band had such a independent personality, and I just really respected the label. Most things that came out of that were on rotation. And at the same time, I was listening to a lot of Unique Leader records. And this is before it was, they went through their, dare I say, second era of like the more deathcore leaning roster that they seem to be selling now. But at the time, when Eric was around, RIP, Disgorge, Disavowed, Hyamia, Brutus, Decrepit Birth, just Seven Savior. It was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. So I think the discographies from both of those labels really informed my interest in extreme music. And I was just addicted to the worlds that most of the records on both labels had created. I was lost. I also smoked a lot of pot as a teenager, and so it was a good time to be smoking pot actually with those two labels around at that time. And I still treasure so many of those albums as just some of the greatest. It is kind of cool actually to see a lot of the younger blood now. In the midst of what seems to be a resurgence of that, I guess like Californian brutal tech death sound that a lot of those Unique Leader records, had really encapsulated, and they do it really well. So it is kind of cool. I'll take that over the new wave of old school death metal stuff, where it's just the obituary worship and the bolt thrower worship stuff that I feel has just been kind of done to death for the last 5+ years. But that's just me.
Yeah, there's a lot of retro stuff going around at the moment. There's no doubt. I like that you mentioned Knitting. I've got a music show and I played them a fair bit on there. I identified them a couple of whatever not this latest release, but I think the release beforehand. I like to put a lot of the most extreme stuff that I can find, and they were right in the middle of that. So I can hear some of not their influence in your music, but I can hear you coming from you're on a similar spectrum. But the other thing that I think is worth noting about your approach to things is your visual aspect. So I talked about Inward to Abraxas up top, okay, the video. But it's one of the more impressive tech death videos, I suppose, around, if I could label your music somewhere adjacent to that or in and amongst all of that. And there's a strobe effect about 8/10 of the way through as well. So how did you achieve that?
So I'm not sure what the opposite of synesthesia is, but in recording that, I actually wanted to recreate an experience that I had on a I really don't mean to make myself sound like some dope fiend, but I was trying to recreate a psychedelic experience that I had, in which I can only really describe as my vision blinking, similar to that strobe effect that I hope we've recreated. And for a good 30, 40 minutes, I ended up at this very bizarre house party, not knowing anybody there, holding down these conversations, just trying to kind of hold myself together as everything got quite intense and quite animated. And I've never had flashbacks from that experience, but I've always wanted flashbacks from that experience. And when we design our music, well, at least for me, whenever I'm contributing to our music, I try to make our music make me feel a particular way that makes me crave playing it again. And that was in recreating that experience. I was hoping that every time that we play that song live, it would give me a flashback to that, because as terrifying as it was also a hell of a lot of fun. So when we were recording, it made sense to use the tremolo effect, but with very intense parameters. So just 100% mix, an incredibly fast rate, so that it did sound like it was strobing. And I remember when we were lining up the effects ready for mix down, Christian was like, "Man, this is pretty intense. Do we not kind of want to ease back a little bit so that there's just like a little more of the dry guitar coming through?" And I was just like, "Absolutely not, man. Like we really need to push this." And so I think the audio mix really informed the visual cues that we also pushed for with Rob Zawistowski, who did the video. We've worked with Rob before. He's amazing. I think sometimes you just really, really need to push for what your artistic vision and intent is, so that you are communicating in a very authentic and personal way. And that was a very personal experience, and I did have to push. Well, I don't want to say I had to push. There was no pushback per se, but I just really had to communicate the importance of making sure that the audio effect was incredibly abrasive. And I also had to, I felt that it was important to make sure that visually it was also very abrasive as well. So yeah, I guess in a roundabout way of saying, I kind of just wanted to recreate an experience that I had that I really enjoyed. So.
Killer. Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for the explanation too behind it. It's relatable in some way. Especially the flashback side of things with psychedelics is I can't say I haven't done LSD, but AS sort of is very gentle, and it comes in waves. And there's moments when you're working away and all of a sudden you go, "Oh, I remember going through that bit whilst I was journeying," but you've forgotten it up until that moment in time. So it could just be memory recall or flashback or what have you. But there are moments when you do AA where it's incredibly difficult, actually. But it's difficult. A is very different to everything else in that, from what I've tried anyway, in that you're still very present. You're still conscious, you're still you, but you've got this, it's like your consciousness has just expanded so much to the point where all this other stuff then becomes part of it. You're in this DMT reality, as I call it. Probably got another name, but the veil is lifted. It's lifted, or the barrier's been removed. So it's actually a world that you step into, if you like. It's like a threshold. And so my point in amongst all of that is that I'm not surprised at all that if you've done your version of journeying and you've had that experience, and then you're able to actually bring that into the conscious reality. And I actually believe that's what those experiences are all about, bringing what you feel and what you sense over there into the here and now. And there's no better place than art to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And I also think it's incredibly important to just dissolve the ego and not have too much pride or concern about what anybody else is going to think about your attempts in doing so. I guess, in an interesting connection here, sonically and talking about this, I did leave out one record recently that I've been very impressed by. And the reason that I'm very impressed by it is because I do get the sense that there is a very prominent spirit within it. And that's the new Vipassi record. I'm sure you're familiar.
Oh, yeah.
The instrumental project.
Melbourne bit, yeah.
Yes. To me, and I'm not sure that it is, I did send a message to Ben and the rest of the guys, just letting them know how proud I was of them when I first heard that record. But to me, when I listened to that record, it reminded me of the spirit of the Golden Teacher, psilocybin. And I'm not sure if that's something that was intentional or coincidental or what, but I do feel that Yeah, I feel that there are some bands that do it really well. I'm not sure if we are one of those bands. I hope to explore more of those soundscapes and stuff as the band continues. But I feel very inspired by those that do, and don't do it in a cheesy way. You know, like there are so many artists and stuff that just kind of flaunt about manipulating their consciousness and stuff in like a totally egomaniacal way. And it kind of undoes the spiritual work of using these compounds in a positive way. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, there's no there's two types of people. There's people that do these things because it's recreational and they're looking for a night off, in inverted commas, and there's other people that are trying to discover things. So it's not coming from an ego perspective. And God help you if you did some of this stuff and looking for a recreational activity, because it's going to be quite the opposite as you've experienced. And I think we all go through that at times, even when we go into things with the most positive headspace. These things are great teachers. You talk about psilocybin or peyote and they're all teachers, mate. They're all things that they show you things, they allow you to experience things that you just don't get in conscious reality.
Yeah, and I've thought about experimenting with different compounds for different albums too, just to really kind of submit to these different messengers to influence what we write about. Some of them really scare me. I've often wondered how ATRÄ BILIS would sound under the influence of something like the Great Datura. Could possibly be, it could just be an absolute nightmare. It could be the most negative thing that we ever write. So they're not all positive. There are different compounds and messages that are put here to teach us different things. And it's not just love and empathy. There's a reason that we learned how to kill each other as well. And, that's in plant medicine as well. So it's a wide spectrum of things to learn from.
Bloody oath it is. Yeah, especially when you're coming at it from our current perspective, the reality and civilization that we're ensconced with at the moment, where we are so disconnected from nature and we're so very much entwined in the technological reality of things. I've seen and I've experienced that. I've had a moment where I felt like I was standing in the smack bang in the middle of my iPhone just because of the amount of times we're looking at it. And what it's showing you is how ensconced we are in this mesh, this technological mesh. And there's no judgment. It's just showing you what is. And are you happy with that? Cool. If you're not happy with that, make some different decisions. And I wasn't very happy with it, actually. So the answer was then, okay, so you need to do more bushwalking and getting out with the family a bit more into nature. And we're pretty fortunate around where we are. I don't know whether fortunate's the right word, but you know what Yowies are, surely, being Aussie. Yowies, yeah.
Absolutely.
Tons of sightings around us here, northern Gold Coast. One of the last urbanized areas in southeast Queensland, and there's tons of sightings around. So I'm on a lot of the forums, and I'm not saying that I believe them. I've just got an open mind to other people's experiences. And I always say this, with regards to Yowies and aliens, if someone says that they've seen it and they talk with conviction, I believe that they have believed that they've seen it. Whether or not, I understand through my journeying with Aya that there's a very much a trans-dimensional element, the idea of timelines, they're very real. And so walking around here, I've been on a couple of the tracks that are very famous Yowie sightings as well, and I've just tried to sort of connect in with that energy and see if I can pick up a vibe on things. And I haven't seen or heard anything yet, but you're pretty deep into the great Australian bush, mate, and there's not a lot of chance of anybody coming to your rescue if there's a Yowie around you when you're walking solo on some of those tracks. Of course, I don't take my family too deep into these things, but I will go into them. And yeah, it's just you pick up on this vibe like, wow, you're out here, you're alone, you're having this communion with nature, and you do feel like this is a perfect place for a Yowie to exist.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more, I guess, there's no better reset than to just kind of leave leave your phone behind and just be out in nature and just listen. The things that you can learn from an open sky and the environment around you is really amazing. I mean, even just taking off your shoes and walking through grass makes you feel completely different. I don't know too much about the Yowies, but I do know that there is some, apparently anyways, to everything that I've seen. Possibly I'm just like gullible or what, but it seems like there's some pretty substantial evidence to the Tasmanian tiger still being sighted on occasion as well. I haven't done any, deep hikes into your area, but I mean, there is just so much expanse. There's so much, there's just so much of Australia to see that, anybody that, is maybe possibly being condescending about, these like cryptid lore, also needs to kind of remember that it's like, we're not the only people here on this place. There are other ecosystems for which we can't inhabit, and there's other animals that while fewer in number may still exist as well. So yeah, I'm totally open to all that stuff as well. I'd love to do a Yowie hunt with you if I'm ever in the area. It sounds like it'd be fun, man.
Mate, let's do it. Yeah. I listen to Australian Yowie researchers a fair bit, and I think there's hundreds of YouTube episodes posted by those guys. And for all of the skeptics out there, I mean, how can these people know each other? They all can't be in cahoots with each other, but the stories are all adjacent. And it's the banality of the stories too, which is quite appealing. Like a lot of this stuff happens deep in the Australian bush, as you can appreciate. So a trucker driving through outback Queensland or what have you, but it's still in the bush areas, not in the, where bush borders outback. And there's just this thing in the middle of the road and it kind of looks like an ape, but it's down on all fours and then it stands up and it's 8 foot high and it doesn't make any sense. And just the way the truck driver's describing what he's seeing and how it doesn't compute, and he drives past and he looks at it and he's like, what the hell was that? And there's just thousands of encounters like that for it not to have some substance, for it not to be.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the other thing too is, I mean, like evolutionarily, I mean, Australia is an isolated island, and just to look at any of our other animals, to put it into perspective, I mean, let's look at what a platypus is. It's possibly one of the strangest animals that I know of, or like even a southern cassowary. And we were talking about this on tour, like just how bizarre some of the animals that inhabit Australia really are. So, if you've got this blind half otter, half duck, marsupial that lays eggs, swimming around somewhere, and you're like, oh, cool, yeah, I know that exists. And somebody's like, okay, well, maybe a striped tiger doesn't exist. It's like, I don't know, where do you draw the line? I think it's just a numbers game at this point, but yeah,
the very deep and complex history of Australia is almost completely hidden. And there's a fellow called Rex Gilroy who's passed away last year, I think, but he was a cryptologist as well, cryptozoologist, but he was also a fellow that studied coastlines. And in his reporting, he's found a Phoenician port south of Mackay in a place called Serena. And he talks about evidence of smelting there. And the deep reading I've done in the archive that is the internet, has brought up that the type of gold that is found in a lot of the Egyptian artifacts, apparently it has signatures of coming from our part of the world. Okay, so the mining, so confirming if you want to go down this route, confirming that a lot of this stuff is mined here and that the biblical land of is actually Australia. Talking about a land of gold. Okay, and it makes sense if there's a seafaring nation which can travel far, far away. And as you know, we've got Melbourne was a city which is literally built on gold, on the money that gold fetched. And And you think, well, there's got to be something to this, but of course, mainstream institutions just dismiss it outright. It's not with conventional and the current narrative of things, and you just think, why can't we actually know for sure what is going on here? What's the harm in this? Why aren't we allowed to understand if there are, like the Queensland in particular seems to be a hotspot for this stuff, and there's something called the Gympie Pyramid, and look, inexplicably, there's just mounds and mounds of sandstone blocks that are 17 ton each, 18 ton each, and it's clear they've clearly been there for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. You can't date these things, as you know, so you've got to use water, the erosion that water causes, to actually date these things. But it's like, well, who bloody put them there? That's the question. So, and if we get to the bottom of that.
I mean, if we had the answers for life, though, like there'd be no point. There'd be no point to any of this. So I think at some point you just got to, you just got to understand that, you know, if we knew everything, like, we'd be bored. There would be no wonderment. There would be, I just couldn't imagine how fruitless and beige just hanging around knowing everything would be. So yeah, I guess there's that way of looking at it as well. I'd hate to know everything personally.
I'd like to know
the idea
though.
of hypothesis.
Yeah. that stuff
yeah,
would be fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of stuff I'd like to know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I know that I also wonder why the fuck doesn't anybody else know? But, you know, there's that too.
Mate, what about talking about the touring? I know you've got a bunch of touring coming up to support the album. So the Galactic Gore 24 tour sounds like it's going to be an extravaganza. So is that the biggest tour of its kind that you've undertaken?
We just finished that, actually. That was, to date, that was the longest. And I guess we covered the most Ks as well. It was effectively, it was 2 loops to the west coast of the US. And it was also our first tour with continental touring. So that was interesting because the previous tour of the US that we did was, of course, we had some help with some other promoters and booking agents and stuff, but it was very much DIY and, you know, just kind of manning the helm and getting the logistics and things down. So it was nice to have a more hands-off approach and just kind of say yes to a lot more. It was great. We went out with, I guess, like a sci-fi themed melodic tech death band called Zoth from Seattle. And to me, they kind of remind me of, imagine if there was a power metal band playing Necrophagist almost. Like there are those vibes there, but they're just like total riffers. And there's no clean vocals or anything like that, but there's like that, there's that charge feeling that kind of, you know, that they embody. So they were great. And then we also met up with a band called Atoll from the Southwest, and they are a slamming, brutal death metal band. So it was really cool for us because I feel like our sound was just kind of right between the middle of their two sounds. The bands were amazing personalities. There wasn't a single asshole on tour, at least outwardly. I'm sure maybe I was an asshole to some people, but everybody that I got to work with was fantastic. So yeah, it was good. So that was the Galactic Gore tour. We got to see some cities we'd never seen before, which was an added bonus. And in a couple of months, we actually head out to the East Coast, USA, for the first time, and we'll be playing with Ignitive and Dysentery.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think that's So it's not quite 2 weeks. It's just shy of 2 weeks, but we're really excited for that because, you know, it kind of seems like every second comment on any show announcement, there's somebody from the East Coast saying, "Come out here," you know. So
yeah,
hopefully, if at least half of all those people that have been saying, come out east, actually turn up. It'll be a great time. So really looking forward to that. It kind of feels like the USA is our market right now. So our focus is going to be to just really just force ourselves down every American's throat, and hopefully things fall into place thereafter.
Yeah. I'm really happy for you that you're able to take advantage of that North American market, because there's, as you know, being an Aussie, you can release things into a void if you're just here. But I know from my listenership, it's up to 60, 70% is North American, specifically USA. And it's just such a huge market. And I was only there recently because I went on the 70,000 tons of metal cruise as a journalist.
Awesome.
And America always reminds me of it's a cliche. It's a much bigger, far more industrial version of Australia, with some more cultural peculiarities. But,
to say the least, yeah.
But it gives you a huge, the runway. I feel like you've lifted off the runway, and now it's just a case of how much energy and effort you feel like you want to put into this is how far you can actually take it.
Yeah, I mean, the States it's a really tough one for us still being Canadian. I really, I don't like complaining, but there are definitely challenges in getting to the States, regardless of where you come from. If you're outside of the States, just like Australians, we also need to apply for visas to play shows there legally, and they can be very expensive and they can take a long time. And the amount of stress that's associated with that is, it's tough, Thankfully, our visas and stuff have all been approved. I've been quite proactive with that. But the US is very expensive too. I mean, like the Canadian and the Australian dollar to the US is quite low. So the investments that go into that, merchandise and gas and things, you just really need to make sure that your guarantees are going to make sure that you can, at the very least, get from show to show. And we're still doing our financial budgets and making sure that, we're tracking dollar for dollar what we earn and what we spend on gas and merchandise refills and food and all those things, just to make sure that we're in the green for everything. Because if you don't, I mean, it can capsize pretty quickly, and it can't always be sustainable, especially with a band of our size. So this was also the first tour that we did where we bought a van, we converted a van and slept in our van. And that saved a lot of money. If you're saving anywhere between, really the cheapest that you can stay if you're not staying with friends is like in a Motel 6 or something. And you're still looking at, $100, after tax USD per night. And, if you're playing 25 plus dates, that's thousands of dollars USD. And when you convert that back into Canadian or Australian dollars, a substantial amount of money just on somewhere to sleep. So, we're trying to do things within our means. I think that for the for the East Coast US tour that we have coming up, it'll be a little bit different because we may have to fly in. So I'm not sure that we'll be able to use our own van, but, it's still part of the learning process. We have our numbers for the most recent tour to, inform our decisions on how we do it. But you are right. The US is definitely the market, especially with, a label like $20 Spin behind us, because, the distribution that they have is all throughout. And we can see it in our stats. Any band that has a look at their Spotify monthly roundup will tell them who's listening. And for our band, it's, they're American males aged between 30 and 45.
Yeah.
So that's who we have to play to. And there's also that, there's that Hollywood-esque glamorization that just comes with everything American, where everybody looks into what's happening in America and perceives it to be huge globally. Often I'll go see bands that I think are massive in America, playing in America, playing to 30, 40 people.
Yeah.
But, when they leave America and they play a show anywhere else, they're playing to 200, 300 people. So, it's an interesting one. But yeah, I don't think that we'll be doing Europe or many other places until we've at least substantiated our name in the US a little more. Just so that we can maintain things financially, because we don't want to be a band that's paying to play per se.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Yeah. Yeah. Mate, I'll make this my final question for you then. Are you going to bring it back home anytime soon?
Oh, mate, I'd love to. Yeah, I think it would just like on a personal level, it would. I would just be so immensely grateful just to be able to share my friends and my culture and the weather and food and just the vibes of Australia with my best friends that I play in this band with. And it's really difficult. I don't think there's like a perfect place to live, but I miss home so much. I know I talk about it a lot, so I'd love to just have an opportunity to share that with the guys, and playing shows on top of that would be a bonus. So yeah, love to do it, but excuse me, we've got a team together, and they've got our interests at heart. Nothing's been announced yet, but the wheels are definitely in motion to facilitate some shows down under. So yeah, hopefully that comes into fruition soon, because it'd be amazing. Absolutely. And yeah, I miss Australian bands. I miss the Australian scene. So it'd be nice to recharge the batteries with some of Australia's talent as well.
I bet. Yeah, there's a lot happening at the moment. There's a ton of bands around these days. I know people are complaining about the local scene or what have you, and saying there's not a lot of people going out, but that's because there's supporting all of the bands, but that's because there's a ton of bands at the moment. And have you seen how many bands are coming through Australia every week from North America and Europe? It's just nuts, mate.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I mean, yes, I have heard. The main question I have is, how does anybody afford it? Because
that's the issue. Yeah. That's it. Spot on. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, that's the problem. Is that, look, I get into most of these shows for nothing because I can cover them, but most of the average person doesn't do this. So you can. There are some weeks where there's 3 bands coming through, and they're playing the Brightside in Brisbane, and that's a shitty venue. And you think, wow, if I'm a punter and paying $80 to, you're on, $600 a week or what have you, got rent and everything else to pay for, and then you go and see 2 or 3 bands in a week. That's an extreme case, but it's happened. You're not going to miss Suffocation if they come through. You know what I'm saying? Guys like us, you're just not going to miss them.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But you can barely see them when you go to them. It's not really bang for your buck, and that's a real issue in the scene. And people are trying to put on more local shows where there's 7 or 8 of the local bands, but it's a lot of time out too. And look, you can appreciate after sharing with you what I have, I don't drink anymore. There's just no point. So they're long days. And I think a lot of people, and that's what the zoo in Brisbane just closed down on the basis of that, saying they've never been busier, and the so-called, the ticket sales or gate takings have never been higher. But people are drinking way, way less than what you and I were when we were coming through. They're just not turning 18 and getting pissed like we did back in the day. So,
mate, I mean, I didn't even have to wait till I was 18. I don't know about you. Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is, I mean, you can kind of feel the stress in merch sales too. Like you can, if you play a more rural show, everybody's coming out because they usually get skipped over, and you will make a squillion on merch. And then if you're to a big city where, they are spoiled for choice and there's option paralysis, there's not only is there less money coming through the merch sales, because they're also, they've got groceries to eat and they've got a higher rent to pay and stuff, and another show to go to tomorrow. They're just spread more thin. So it's, I mean, I can only imagine what it's like in Australia, where just the setup costs to get these bands over there is so elaborate. Comparatively, here everybody just kind of jumps into a car and drives around. Yeah, there's long drives, but you don't have to load up, at least 4 band members plus, a couple of team members and stuff onto a flight, pay for accommodation, everything else on top. It's crazy. Yeah. So I mean, it's great that there are all those bands coming through, but I can tell you one thing now, mate. Like, I've been living in Vancouver, Canada, and I've had an opportunity to see endless lists of bands that I've loved forever passing through, but very few of them are as unique or as heavy as bands like Croptic, the Berserker, the Bremelin. The list goes on, So. Yeah, Misery. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could go on forever. I mean, I'm from Melbourne, so we were spoiled with grindcore and stuff as well. So bands like Fuck 'Em Dead, Kill, Undenism, The Derek Became Nothing, Roscoe. A lot of those bands aren't doing as much now, but I mean, you'd have to go to Obscene Extreme in the Czech Republic to see bands of that ilk. Otherwise, you go to Melbourne, it's $10. You get to see 5 or 6 of those bands, and they're all headliners in my eyes. So, yeah,
you're not wrong, mate. Yeah, it's there's a thriving scene here. It's just people's resources are a bit stretched at the moment. Cost of living crisis across the Western Hemisphere, but music is still worth supporting. There's no doubt about that. And on the basis of the evidence on Aumicide, I think I said it right then, mate, you're set for a very long career. And as long as you want to take this, I think you've got the opportunity to do it. So congratulations on crafting such a killer album. Hope to see you down here sometime soon. And thanks very much for the chat, brother. I really appreciate it.
I absolutely appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'll have to reach out if we're in your neck of the woods, because I'd love to go hunting some yowies with you, mate.
Fucking oath, mate. Yeah. I'll send you something. I'll find you on social, and I'll just send you just the local thing near me. What I'm talking about, it's serious shit. So the guy's deadly serious too about it too. It inspired him, I think, to continue and do even more research and investigation, because he almost got killed by one. As you do, you know, you get killed by something, so you go even deeper into it. But that's what this bloke did. But I'll send it to you on socials, mate.
Yeah, I'd love that, mate. Thank you.
Sweet. Well, thanks, brother. Thanks for the chat. Much appreciated.
Absolutely, mate. Thank you for wanting to have a chat. I appreciate it. It's been a blast.
There he is, ladies and gents. David Stepanavicius from the Australian / Canadian outfit. Let's work with that. ATRÆ BILIS. The new album is titled Aumicide. Do check it out, and do watch that Inward to Abraxas video too. It's quite something. Wow, we've come a long way from where underground bands used to have either no videos at all, or check out the video for Vile from Cannibal Corpse, or Devoured by Vermin, I should say. And it's pretty fucking pedestrian, to say the least, compared to something like Inward to Abraxas. And that's not knocking Cannibal Corpse at all. It's just how far your money went back in 1996. Anyway, all right, that's all from me. There's many more conversations like the one with David over at scarsandguitars.com. If you love your extreme metal, this is where you can reside. If you love the interviews anyway. Members of Obituary, Death, Morbid Angel, Deicide, Cannibal Corpse, so many. Go and check it out. I love what I do, so I'm going to keep doing it. My name's Andrew Mackay Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast. Until the next one, it's a goodbye for now.